Imagine you're 21 years old, and the whole country is watching you breathe. One small TV studio, one black and white screen in millions of living rooms, and the second you step into the light, the audience doesn't clap. It erupts. Producers whisper, "Don't show too much." Parents call you a threat. Teenagers call you a miracle, and you can feel it in your chest. This isn't just fame. This is a nation discovering a new addiction, and you are it. Because the first scream is never free, and if you stay with me until the end, you'll see exactly what Elvis Presley paid for being the first rock and roll TV idol, and why the curse of being first doesn't end when the show ends. Elvis didn't just become famous in 1956. He became the blueprint. A 21-year-old from Tupelo, Mississippi, pulled into a brand new machine called television at the exact moment it learned how to turn a human being into a national obsession. And we're going to walk it in order, where he comes from, what he had to survive before the world ever said his name. Then the rise, the week-by-week ignition of hysteria, controversy, and worship, culminating on the biggest stage in America. And finally, the cost, the pressure, the control, the loneliness under the crown, the long tunnel after the screams, and the ending, how it really ended, and why his legacy still controls the way fame works today. So don't blink, because the moment America met Elvis on television, it didn't just change music, it changed what it meant to be a person in public. Before there were spotlights, there was scarcity. Before there were screaming girls, there was a two-room house and a family trying to stay one step ahead of ruin. Elvis Aaron Presley is born into grinding poverty in Tupelo, Mississippi on January 8, 1935. And right at the start, before he even takes his first breath, life marks him. His identical twin brother, Jesse Guerin, is stillborn. That's not just a sad footnote. That's a shadow you grow up with, the kind of quiet absence you can't explain to anyone, because you don't even have words for it yet. The kind of loneliness you carry without understanding why it's so heavy. And then the world around him doesn't soften it. It sharpens it. His father, Vernon, can't secure steady financial ground, and when he's incarcerated for altering a check, it's more than hardship. It's humiliation. It's instability turned into a family identity, always almost falling, always almost losing everything. That's the foundation, not glitter, not luxury, not legend. Just a kid growing up with poverty at the door, grief in the walls, and a need, deep human need, to be enough. Here's the part nobody tells you. When a person grows up with that kind of void, applause doesn't just feel good, it feels like oxygen. And when you finally find oxygen, you don't want a little. You want to breathe forever. Music becomes the way out, not as a hobby, like a lifeline, a way to turn the noise in your head into something that makes sense. A way to take a life that feels small and make it loud enough to matter. By 1953, he graduates from Humes High in Memphis and records a demo acetate. By 1954, he's at Sun Studios. That's all right. Not just a recording, an ignition, a new kind of blend, a new kind of energy. And it doesn't sound like safe. It sounds like tension snapping. It sounds like gospel fire mixed with country ache and rhythm and blues electricity. But the most dangerous part isn't the sound, it's the feeling. Because when Elvis performs, people don't just hear him, they recognize something in him. Something unpolished, something honest, something that looks like freedom. And that's when the world starts to lean in. And you have to understand what that means in the mid-1950s. This is an America obsessed with control. Control of bodies, control of behavior, control of what's appropriate. So when a kid shows up who moves like he doesn't fear the rules panic. Elvis doesn't know it yet, but the moment he becomes the answer to a generation's hunger, he's about to become the target of a nation's anxiety. And then, in 1955, the management enters the story. Colonel Tom Parker becomes his manager, and Elvis's contract is sold to RCA for $35,000. That number sounds like success. But it's also the sound of the machine turning on. Because once the machine sees profit, it stops asking what you need. And that's the first open secret of this story. Elvis wasn't built for war. He was built for love. But love at scale can turn into war anyway, so hold on to that. Because in 1956, television is about to meet Elvis, and the country is about to scream like it's never screamed before. And when the screaming starts, it will never fully stop. 1956 is not just a year, it's a collision. Rock and roll collides with national television, and Elvis collides with America's living room. This is the era before social media, before viral clips, before anyone can hide behind a screen name. When you appear on television, it's not content. It's an arrival. It's the whole country meeting you at once. Elvis's rise in 1956 is a staircase built out of exposure, controversy, and teenage devotion, each step louder than the last. First comes the CBS stage show, 6 appearances, January to March. Not yet a national riot, but the first spark of national recognition. The country gets a taste. Then April 3rd and June 5th, the Milton Berle Show. And June 5th becomes a turning point. He performs Hound Dog, slows it down into something heavier, bluesier, and he moves. Not politely, not carefully. He moves like a person who doesn't know he's supposed to apologize for existing. The press reacts like they've witnessed a crime scene. The establishment calls him obscene. A critic dismisses him as having no discernible singing ability. They mock him, scold him, warn parents about him, and that outrage, this is crucial, doesn't stop Elvis. It advertises him. Because teenagers aren't hearing, "Don't watch this." They're hearing, "This is the thing adults are afraid of." And fear is a billboard. Then, July 1st, the Steve Allen Show tries to tame him. Tuxedo, a dog, a joke. Make him harmless, make him cute. But the machine learns another lesson. Even when you try to shrink Elvis, you only prove he's big enough to scare you. And now the country isn't just talking about him. They're dividing over him. This is where it stops being a story and becomes a warning. Because once the nation turns you into an argument, you stop being a person. You become a symbol, and symbols don't get days off. Then comes the night that makes him a permanent national idol. September 9th, 1956. The Ed Sullivan Show. Here's what matters about Ed Sullivan. It isn't just a stage. It's a gate. It's family television. It's America's approval stamp. And Elvis's debut draws about 60 million viewers, with record ratings, an 82.6% share. That means the country doesn't just watch, it concentrates. And the moment he appears, the studio becomes a storm. Screams, real screams, not polite excitement, not applause, a physical wave of sound that swallows the room. You were there, or you weren't there. If you were there, you remember the feeling of the living room turning into a stadium. If you weren't, imagine a whole nation suddenly sharing one emotion at the exact same second. This is the birth of the modern TV idol. And the cameras don't know how to handle it. The producers don't know how to frame it, because they're not just filming a singer, they're filming a social event. And the panic shows up in the rules. By his final Ed Sullivan appearance, January 6, 1957, censorship is ordered. Elvis is filmed from the waist up. Think about what that means. They're telling the country, we can't show you all of him. Not because of violence, not because of weapons, because of movement. And that censorship doesn't shrink him, it crowns him. It turns him into a forbidden headline. It confirms the myth, Elvis is too powerful for the screen. And now the hysteria isn't just fandom, it's ownership. Because the crowd didn't just want more, it wanted everything, every song, every appearance, every tour date, every piece of him, and the machine feeds that hunger. In 1956 alone, he's touring nationwide with 200-plus shows. He's not just performing, he's being consumed in real time. And somewhere inside all that noise is a 21-year-old kid who started out just trying to escape poverty, and now can't escape himself. And this is the cliff you don't see until you're already falling. The more the world chants your name, the less space there is for your real one. Because now, Elvis isn't just a person. Elvis is a job. And once you become a job, someone will always try to own your hours. That's when the leash tightens. That's when control shows up dressed as protection. And that's when the bill arrives. The curse of being first is simple and brutal. When you're first, there's no blueprint, no mental safety net, no professional map for how to survive being wanted by millions of strangers at the same time. So Elvis builds his own system, a fortress of familiarity, a circle of friends and protectors that becomes known as the Memphis Mafia, people who keep him safe, keep him company, keep the world out. But here's the trap. Sometimes the same people who keep you safe also keep you insulated. And when you're isolated inside fame, you can lose the one thing that can save you: truth. And then, the silence. After the concerts, after the screaming, after the cameras, there's a moment where the room goes quiet. And that quiet can be terrifying if you've trained your nervous system to feel alive only when the world is loud. Colonel Tom Parker isn't just a manager in these documents. He's described as an architect of total control, a man who treats Elvis like the main attraction and himself like the person who knows how to keep the money flowing. And the decisions are financially huge, but personally devastating. Parker's commission rises to 50% after 1967. He demands a share of publishing. Elvis never tours internationally, partly because Parker can't obtain a U.S. passport and the machine won't risk what it can't control. And in the 1960s, Elvis is locked into long-term movie contracts, 3 formulaic Hollywood films per year, until even Elvis expresses frustration about the repetitive roles and shallow scripts. This is what the curse looks like in real life. You become so valuable that the system stops letting you grow, because growth is unpredictable, and predictable is profitable. If you think it ends on stage, it doesn't. It follows you into your sleep. It follows you into your relationships. It follows you into your body. By the late 1950s and into the decades after, the documents describe a pattern of self-medication that escalates, first to regulate energy and weight, later to regulate everything. Wake up, calm down, perform, recover, sleep, repeat. By 1968, he's viewed as culturally static, a relic while the world changes around him. Parker negotiates a Christmas TV special for NBC meant to be safe, polite, milquetoast. But Elvis meets director Steve Binder, and something in him wakes up. Binder is blunt. He tells Elvis his career is in the toilet, and Elvis, exhausted by yes men and scripts, finds that honesty refreshing. Parker allegedly tries to sabotage the live audience energy, but Elvis pushes through. He puts on black leather and sits down with his original bandmates for a raw, unscripted jam session, like he's trying to remember who he was before the machine taught him to smile on command. And at the climax, Elvis insists on performing If I Can Dream despite Parker's objections, turning the special into something more than entertainment. It becomes a statement, a reach for meaning, a fight for redemption. For a moment, the machine loosens. For a moment, Elvis isn't a product. He's a human being with a pulse. But here's the cruelest part. The comeback opens one door, and another door slams shut behind him. Because after 1968 comes the grind that breaks the body. In 1969, Elvis returns to live performance in Las Vegas. Initially a triumph. Then it becomes a labyrinth. A brutal schedule, 636 shows contractually obligated, night after night, glitter, grind, and the silence behind the screams. And when your body can't keep up with the myth, chemistry starts doing what rest can't. By some as trying to keep Elvis away from street drugs, but associated with massive prescribing. By 1977 alone, the documents cite over 10,000 doses of narcotics, amphetamines, and sedatives prescribed. That's not living. That's survival by schedule. And while the world sees rhinestones, forced smiles, and the title King, the private reality is battles with depression, insomnia, chronic health issues, hypertension, enlarged heart, colon problems, and more, masked until they can't be masked anymore. This is the part that hurts. Elvis became famous to escape poverty, but fame built a different kind of poverty around him, a poverty of peace, a poverty of quiet, a poverty of being left alone. And now we have to talk about how it ends, respectfully, truthfully, without turning a man into a spectacle. On August 16, 1977, Elvis is found unconscious in his Graceland bathroom by his fiancée, Ginger Alden. He's 42 years old. The Shelby County coroner reports a cardiac arrhythmia, an irregular heartbeat, ascribed to hypertensive heart disease. Toxicology finds many prescription drugs in his system, though they're ruled not to be the direct cause in that report. And because Elvis is Elvis, controversy never stops circling the ending. Friends and observers describe heavy medication, while his doctor is acquitted of wrongdoing and insists the prescriptions were medical necessities. Even later analyses suggest Elvis may have had genetic risk factors for obesity and heart disease. So what's the honest conclusion? A human body under impossible pressure for too long finally gave out. And then the world screams again, this time in grief. His funeral becomes a national media event. Crowds mob Graceland. President Carter orders National Guardsmen for crowd control. Think about that. The same country that once demanded the camera cut him off at the waist now needs soldiers to manage the crowd mourning him. That's the full circle of the first modern idol. Elvis's influence is immeasurable. He's described here as effectively inventing the modern pop idol phenomenon, an explosion of youth culture, media outrage, and mass devotion that the world has copied ever since. But the legacy is also a duality. He mainstreamed African-American music in a segregated society, helping relax rigid cultural lines while debates continue about appropriation and race in his rise. He's mythic and contested, lionized and questioned. And that's exactly what happens when you're first. You don't just change the culture. You become the battlefield where culture fights with itself. And the deepest, darkest legacy isn't even the records or the costumes. It's the blueprint. Television learned through Elvis that outrage is gasoline, censorship is branding, and intimacy, bringing a performer into the living room, creates a bond so intense it can feel like ownership. That's influencer culture before the phone. That's fandom as identity before social media. That's the modern attention economy, born in black and white, on the back of a 21-year-old who had no idea what he was stepping into, because the first scream is never free. So here's the question I'll leave you with. If Elvis couldn't escape the pressure of being first, what chance does anyone have today? And tell me in the comments, which first should I cover next? Pop, movies, NFL, NBA, or reality? Subscribe for the next first and the bill that comes with it.